What's up, everybody? You are about to watch an amazing episode of GoJo and Golic. 2 hours of fun, starting with Juan Soto's contract, going to the Mets. Eduardo Pérez going to join us from winter meetings to break it all down and talk everything else baseball. Plus, we're in the West. It's a Wilder Wednesday on a Tuesday. Charlotte Wilder will join the program. And drama in the nest. Brandon Graham, you need to keep your mouth shut, okay? We're going to talk about all that more coming up on GoJo and Golic.
We got a great show for you. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review us. Leave us a 5-star rating. And go check us out live Monday through Friday right here, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and check us out there as well. Eduardo Pérez, Charlotte Wilder, as Jesse mentioned, going to be on the show today. Fired up to talk to both of them as we continue to hear the fallout of Juan Soto's contract down at winter meetings where Eduardo Pérez is right now. Also get an update on how the Golden at Bat was received from everyone there. I feel like that got kind of left in the background there. Want to sort of see what the status of that was as we go forward. We've got even more news on the college football front as we get set for the first round of playoff games. A huge injury that could swing the balance of the entire tournament that got reported on yesterday that we will certainly get to and dive in with there. But last night, Dad, Monday Night Football was one of those games that if you squinted hard enough, actually was somewhat entertaining. Now, that could have been a product of me watching that game happen on the Simpsons simulcast, so I was getting the animation and the things that came along with that. But a 27-20 win for the Cincinnati Bengals that included one of the tougher botched special teams plays you've seen all season long. It was so bad, Dad, that a guy you know very well started trending last night. When Leon Lett is trending, you know things have gone wrong for the Cowboys, and that's because late in the game, with about 2 minutes left, the Cincinnati Bengals went to go punt the football back to the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas blocked the punt, but only partially blocked it. And so it went past the line of scrimmage. And as Greg Olsen very accurately explained on Twitter, when it goes past the line of scrimmage, there are no partially blocked punts. That is a live punt at that point. One of the Dallas Cowboys players tried to field it and bobbled it. The Bengals recover it, and then a few plays later, Jamar Chase is in the end zone, and that was all she wrote. So, Dad, no moral victories or anything like that at this point in the season for Dallas. That's a tough way to lose, especially given how their season's gone.
Yeah, Amani Owarie is the player who tried to field the partially blocked punt. It's his first game off IR after missing the last 5 games, and it was reminiscent. You kids back in Google 1993, Cowboys-Dolphins game on Thanksgiving in Dallas. It was actually a snow game. There was snow. That was one of the worst snow games I played in the NFL, and I was on the Dolphins, and we were losing 14-13, and we had a chippy field goal with 5-yard line. We were basically on right in that area. Had a chip shot field goal to win the game, and I was the right end on the field goal team, and I heard the dreaded double thud, the block, and the ball went forward, went past the line of scrimmage. And as Mike said and correctly pointed out, and every special team coach says it, if a field goal kick is blocked or a punt is blocked and it goes past the line of scrimmage, it's Peter, it's whatever word you use that says get the hell away from the ball, do not touch it. And we were just circling around the block punt. It was spinning in the snow on the 3-yard line. It was past the line of scrimmage. We were like, oh, my God, we just lost this game. And from my left side, this blur comes in, and it's Leon Lett. God love him, because he was a great defensive tackle who was known, unfortunately, for a couple of gaffes, this being one of them. Slid in to try and recover the ball and kicked it. And so as soon as he touched it, it was a live ball. We recovered it, and we kicked a field goal and won the game 16-14. By the way, just as a glass half full for Dallas, it was Dallas's last loss of the year. They went on to win the Super Bowl. So it certainly didn't ruin their season, but that was a bad moment for Leon Lett. And with Amani Owarie, he went right for it. He wasn't even thinking about not touching it. The ball went a decent amount over the line of scrimmage and bounced and he was going to catch it on the bounce, and it hit off his arm. Cincinnati recovered. Next thing you know, it's a 40-yard touchdown to Jamar Chase with a little over a minute to go, and a 27-20 win for a meaningless game as far as the playoffs are concerned. But you're right. It was a sneaky good game. It was a competitive game for guys who weren't playing, for anything. So it's a good showing by players, because as individual players, you don't know how you're going to react to the situation. But here's Joe Burrow with his 4th consecutive game of 300 plus yards passing and at least 3 touchdowns. Yet, unfortunately, they're losing the games. I mean, because their defense has given up 27 points a game this year. So it's a head scratcher for both teams, but it was a pretty competitive game.
Yeah. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are reaching Tungsten Arm O'Doyle status from when you had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani as teammates, where every game it's a ridiculous stat line. And you just mentioned it, 369 and 3 touchdowns for him, 14 catches for 177 yards and 2 touchdowns for Jamar Chase. And they barely get by on a 7-point win because the Bengals defense is so porous that Rico Dowdle, who I will say, once the Cowboys decided to make Rico Dowdle the feature back, now all of a sudden there does seem to be some juice there, and that's behind an offensive line that, remember, right now is Chuma Edoga, Tyler Smith, Brock Hoffman, TJ Bass, and Terrence Steele. No more Zach Martin on that offensive line. Obviously, they've had some trouble at left tackle after Tyron Smith left last year because of some of the injuries and some of the tough play for their rookie. And so behind a patchwork offensive line, you've got him going out there and rushing for 100 plus yards and 131 yards for Rico Dowdle in this game. That kept them in it. Cooper Rush is going to be employed as a backup quarterback forever in the NFL. He goes out there and certainly does just enough and continues to as a backup to show you why they're going to have him holding the clipboard for a long time. But Dad, this is one of those where the Bengals continue to be exactly who they were. For the Dallas Cowboys side, we've talked about this. It feels increasingly more, at least possible, that Mike McCarthy will be back as the head coach here. And you see the emotion for this team here. I mean, Demarion Overshone, who's been such a wonderful bright spot for this team during a lost season as a linebacker and a young player, coming in as a blur, like a true nose for the football guy, showing up and making plays. Early last night, no exception. He leaves with an injury, and you saw Micah Parsons, his teammate, crying in the locker room saying he doesn't deserve this. He's played so well. He's been like my little brother. And now Micah Parsons, who's one of the last men standing out there, who's watched so many of his teammates and guys that he respects like Zach Martin go down with injuries in a season where he watches it slipping away, and I think is getting an appreciation for how fleeting all of this can be. Dad was just overcome by it in a way that, again, none of it really means anything for the win-losses, but it is endearing to see how close this team still appears to be in the midst of all this.
The roster wasn't helped much in the offseason by GM Jerry Jones and owner Jerry Jones. It was not helped very much at all. And then it really got depleted with injuries. So they were playing with one arm tied behind their back. I think McCarthy's going to be back, and they just have to reload better. Zach Martin may call it a career. They're going to have to reshuffle the offensive line. They have to get some help on defense. But I can't tell you as a player with Demarion Overshone, second year out of Texas, you're so correct. This guy has been just a shining star. And now you are going to, and Mike McCarthy said the knee injury he thought was pretty serious. Now you're going to spend the offseason rehabbing. In a lost season, a season where you're not making the playoffs, where the team's going nowhere, you're finishing out the string, you get hurt, and you have to rehab the whole offseason. That is just brutal mentally. Physically, listen, players rehab injuries. They know how to rehab injuries. They're going to rehab injuries. It's just the mental side of it, of going through when you're trying to prepare for the next year. You first have to repair yourself before you can prepare. And that's when your team is not in it, it's been a bad year. That's tough. But I do think McCarthy will, just like I thought he wasn't going to be gone. He was going to be gone last year after the embarrassing loss to the Packers, and he stayed. I don't think he's going to get fired. So who knows what's going to happen? But I think he's going to be back.
That question lingering for the Dallas Cowboys on their side in a game that, like you said, ultimately, while there was fringe playoff math that you can associate with either of these teams, in all practicality, neither one is really going to be any sort of real factor in that. So on the Dallas Cowboys side, you have that, though, as the question mark going into last year. And then on the other side right now with the Cincinnati Bengals, we've got an interesting situation because Joe Burrow, after this game, took to the mic. Hey, do you spend more time maybe appreciating these moments because you know next year you might not be able to keep this group together, hinting at T Higgins and what his contract situation is. And Joe Burrow offered this cryptic response about trying to keep the band together. Take a listen.
You know, those discussions are ongoing, and I'm confident that I think we're going to be able to do what it takes to bring T back. And you know, I know that I'm going to do what it takes to get him back, and so is he. We've had those talks, so you know, those are going to be off-season discussions, but I think we're excited about that opportunity.
So, Dad, Joe Burrow saying he's going to do everything he has to do, and that these are conversations that are ongoing right now about trying to bring T Higgins and Jamar Chase back. Both. We know Jamar Chase obviously going to be the next in line to sign the supermassive Justin Jefferson-esque wide receiver deal, especially coming off a season like this. But hearing this, do you actually give them a chance to try and pull this off?
Well, again, a team that waited to do a deal, right? They could have got a deal done with Jamar Chase last year, but they waited on the deal. Now they have T Higgins, who they had tagged with the franchise tag, waiting in the wings as well, who's played in just 8 games this year and is averaging just under 6 receptions a game. It's one of the better 1-2 punches when they're both healthy in the league. So, but they put themselves in a position of lining up to pay people. And, oh, by the way, they need to help their defense. Their defense is flat out bad. They have one guy in Hendrickson at end, and after that, it's they got to fill in some spots. So they have some work to do in the offseason. You would love to see them be able to keep T Higgins, as I said, to have that 1-2 punch. But who knows what the money situation they're going to be in because they have to rebuild on defense.
Yeah, Joe Burrow already making $55 million a year right now. He was one of those guys that signed in a rash of those contracts that put all these dudes above $50 million a year for quarterback. Him, Jalen Hurts, Trevor Lawrence. And so him acknowledging this publicly the way he did, and Dad knowing that, hey, when you sign a quarterback long-term, and this is what we always talk about, and this is the one reason my antenna goes up for this, is because when it's initiated by Joe Burrow, who has enough money to go out here and spend it on Batmobiles and feel pretty good about his, finances, call the money guys, they're okay with this, you can do the $3 million Batmobile. The quarterback is going to always be the bulk of your contract in terms of the salary cap and what you have to allocate. And like we always talk about, Patrick Mahomes signs one of the most team-friendly deals, even as rich as it was for him, that a quarterback has signed in recent memory. And because of the length and strength of it, it allows the Kansas City Chiefs every year to, if they need to make some money back in the margins, go and turn some of it into a signing bonus, spread that out over the life of the cap, and create a little bit of space there. And Joe Burrow, it sounds like, would be a willing participant in whatever goes on going forward in order to make this happen. He's a guy that seems to value, hey, what these guys do for me on offense, what our team could potentially be, enough to potentially help the Bengals do some of the math to make that happen. And so, Dad, that's the only thing. If he is as willing as he wants to be in this conversation, then he's got the power and the chunk of their salary cap to actually swing the balance enough to keep a guy like T Higgins if they want to play some clever cap math, because you'd have to probably do some of this up front. You'd probably have to do signing bonus math to spread this out so that you can get them in a comfortable enough spot to be able to afford them all at once. And this is, oh, by the way, for the Bengals, one of the most historically cheap franchises in sports. And so you always have that in the background of this.
Well, listen, let's throw the truth out there as well. He's willing to do it because, again, quarterbacks do make the bulk of the money, but it's not a sacrifice on his part. He's not sacrificing any of his money to help. He gets all his money. He just gets it in a different way. He gets a big signing bonus to spread out over the contract to give them cap space. So that is help. Don't get me wrong. He is helping, but he is not sacrificing any of his money, but he is in position to restructure every couple of years to help the cap.
Yeah, we'll see what he's willing to do. Like, maybe there is something he's willing to. I don't know. Like, again, it would be unprecedented. I'm sure the NFLPA wouldn't love that, but I think there's a bunch of factors that go into it. But it's just rare that we see a quarterback this candid, especially unnecessarily in this spot. Like, he was just asked about cherishing the moment with his boys and could have brushed right past it. But Joe Burrow is a smart guy and wanted this out there. And now it's going to get the media cycle of everyone going out and everyone talking about this because, Dad, you're right. Listen, the defense has to be the priority of this offseason. You know, we've talked about coaching decisions here. I'll be curious what the future looks like for Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati, since that really has gone sideways since a few years ago when they made the Super Bowl run and he was a household name. But they've got to invest resources in that side of the ball. And will that be a priority for the organization overall to try and retain those guys? It was enough for them to slap the tag on him, try and hold it down for one more year and see what they could make happen. But I do wonder for this Bengals front office, if seeing how far away you were ultimately from being truly competitive. You've got an incredible offense. We talked about Tungsten Armo Doyle and his great wide receiver, and it hasn't bought you a hill of beans because your defense has been so porous. And so I do wonder if they're going to, rather than do this, load up and just try and go on a spending spree on defense to see what they can make happen.
Yeah, and you wonder if because they had no running game, Joe Mixon was gone, but Chase Brown has slowly kind of taken charge in that respect. He's just a second-year guy, I think, out of Illinois, averaging almost 4.5 yards a carry. So you wonder if they're not going to go out and get a running back and just maybe make all the moves on defense. It's a defense, they have 24 sacks. Trey Hendrickson has 12.5 of them. He has over half their sacks.
Yeah.
I mean, they just do not get to the quarterback unless they're blitzing. They have so much work to do on that side of the ball.
They do. Now, and just, the minor note of this as far as the timeline, because Joe Burrow said these will be offseason conversations, because T Higgins played this year on the franchise tag, the soonest the Bengals can have and sign a long-term extension with T Higgins would be when the season ends. And so right now they've got a 1.9% chance of making the postseason according to ESPN research. So it probably ain't going to happen. But once the season ends, then they do have the possibility of signing him from then on out. Jamar Chase, it could happen at any time. We know he's been eligible for that extension, and they just didn't get it done this summer. So, Dad, ultimately, do you think T. Higgins winds up a Bengal next year? Yes or no?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what he's willing to take, and what he's willing to hold out for. And is he a free agent? Can they tag him again? Normally, it's too big of a jump to tag somebody a second time. So if he's a free agent, what's he getting offered from somebody else? Because, yes, Cincinnati is normally not a paying team. They have to pay Jamar Chase, make him, if not the highest paid, one of the top 2 or 3 highest paid wide receivers in the league. So what's left for T. Higgins, because they have work to do on defense? It just may be we don't want to spend a ton of money and we have to spend money in other areas where T. Higgins would get offered more somewhere else and say, hey, you know what? Thanks, but it's time for me to move on. So, choices on both sides.
I think there's a pretty real chance it can happen. I would not have bet on it had we not heard it straight from the horse, in this case, Joe Burrow's mouth. We've seen other dynamic duos be able to keep it together. T. Higgins is a great receiver. He's not going to reset the market at wide receiver by any means in terms of the contract.
So the Eagles flying high on a 9-game win streak, and yet we're hearing about some possible internal beef. So yapper extraordinaire Brandon Graham had this to say about possible drama between Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. Take a listen.
The person that's complaining need to be accountable. And I'm just being honest. You know what I'm saying? And he noticed. I don't know the whole story, but I know that one is trying. And 11 could be a little better with how he responds to things. And they was friends before this. It's but things have changed. And I understand that because life happens. But it's the business side that we have to make sure that we don't let the personal get in the way of the business. And that's what we got to do better as right now.
That was just, oh man. It's like when you start talking and you're word vomiting and you just can't stop. It seemed like he kind of knew he should stop talking, but instead of stopping talking, he just kept explaining himself and it kept getting worse.
Yeah, it's one of those situations, Jesse, where I think Brandon Graham got a little bit too comfortable and said more than he needed to say here, as our producers our mics are open and they are also talking in a way they need to not be talking right now in our ears. But with that being said, yeah, Brandon Graham got a little bit too comfortable, Dad. He has been one of the leaders on this team for quite some time. He is a guy that has been a vocal guy in this locker room, is beloved in that city, is their Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. I saw that situation just got put up the other day. And yet in this spot right here, I think in an effort, and I will give Brandon Graham a favorable read because I think he's earned it, in an effort to try and help smooth out a situation and communicate that message of, hey, we need to go get this aside and focus on ball and focus on getting things handled on the field and in the locker room so that we can be the best team that we need to be. You guys need to put this aside. And he just said it in front of a microphone where now all of us get to hear and talk about it, and it's going to make things exponentially worse.
You listen. You know me, I'm old school in some things, and I know the new school with the social media and players being more open. That's one of the old school things I needs to stay. This is Brandon Graham's 15th year in the league. He's not some second year guy. To air out the laundry is ridiculous, Brandon. It's ridiculous. What are you doing? And I agree with Jesse. He started going and just couldn't find an end to it and just kept going. I mean, it does no good to air that out. You take care of things internally. All it does is bring more questions from reporters to why aren't you getting along? Why aren't you friends? What's going on? And I've already said at the end of this game, it's your 9th straight win. I know it was a tough win against Carolina and you almost lost that game, but it's hard to win in the NFL. It's hard to win. And the mourning and the funeral-like atmosphere after that game just blows my mind. I mean, you're on a winning streak. Okay, you try and repair things during the week, but what is going on? And Brandon Graham, I mean, I was stunned that he just kept talking. He kept going. I was just listening going, what are you doing? Keep this in-house. It's a team with a 9-game winning streak that seems to have a lot of issues going on, which doesn't bode well.
So this is on his weekly radio show on 94 WIP, because I was about to say kudos to whoever gave him the most comfortable environment imaginable to get him to sort of relax his shoulders and actually talk about family business. But it's his show, and so in theory, he controls the valve on this. It just seems atypical. Like, this is not who Brandon Graham has been as a force for this team. And so that's the shocking part to me. But, Dad, what he said, I think, is why you saw that atmosphere and that issue. And he mentioned they were friends before this. Like, they're not just friends. They've known each other since high school. And Jalen Hurts is the godfather of one of A.J. Brown's daughters. So they are that kind of close to where that was the off-field relationship before. And so if there is a fracture here, it sort of does underscore the point, Dad, of how much does this actually matter? And my response is usually always, as much as you let it matter. There are plenty of guys within locker rooms that don't like each other and don't get along. I mean, hell, in the midst of this information in this conversation, we had from the rafters, Donovan McNabb was going on radio talking about this situation, and all of a sudden, Terrell Owens, his former teammate, 2 guys that went to a Super Bowl together, but notably didn't get along, starts chiming in and basically says, oh, that's rich coming from you. And so we get a reminder that, hey, yes, well, listen, Donovan McNabb in that situation and the way that combusted for a lot of Philly fans was something that broke up a team they thought of could have been successful for a number of years and wasn't. So if you're worried about that as the repercussion because of history, I understand it, Philly fans. But at the same time, it also shows you that you don't got to get along for it to get along. If you've got the right team, you've got to respect each other enough in the workplace to go out there enough and handle your business. But if all of a sudden the results on the field or lack thereof, Dad, start to pick at this wound here, that's when you worry about it becoming something that could potentially divide a locker room.
Yeah, and Brandon Graham, he did apologize for it. I made a mistake, and I assumed that it was something that it wasn't. I didn't add to it in a good light, so that's my bad. So he understood. He went too far. And to your point, and I've said this ever since I've been out of the league and in media, 53 guys aren't singing Kumbaya in the locker room. There are differences of opinions. There are those that don't like one another, that don't hang out together, that don't really talk outside of, hey, how you doing? But you get together and you play on the field together. You put aside even if there's the bad blood, you put it aside for the good of the team. Now, I don't know if there's bad blood or what the situation. You talked about how long they've been friends. But, I mean, you be professional about it. and you work out your differences, again, behind closed doors in the locker room. I mean, there's too much talent on this team to let anything kind of personal get in the way. But there are very few locker rooms where the majority or everybody, again, there's not one where everybody gets along. Is it better when a locker room is that way? Well, sure it is. Yeah, absolutely it is. But it's not necessary to win a championship, that's for sure.
No, it's certainly not. When it's two of your best players and people that are vitally important to the offense, then yeah, you worry a little bit more as a team about, hey, and that's, again, where this comes from, the sentiment comes from Brandon Graham, is understanding how important these guys and their on-field relationship are to the team, and why he, I'm sure, speaking for the sentiment that's probably felt around that locker room is, hey, guys, squash this however you need to so we can go out here and play ball to the best of our ability. I'll tell you the way you solve this right now is this next game, they're getting ready to play the Steelers this weekend, right? I mean, A.J. Brown should have 5 targets in the first 3 minutes of this game. A guy who in the last game wasn't targeted until late in the second quarter in a day that was offensively stunted in the passing game, felt some type of way about that with all this in the background. So you've got to go over the top and make Buddy feel the love. And it's not like feeding A.J. Brown is something that is bad for your offense. Generally tends to go pretty well. And so I would say target him early and often, go out here and put it on a team that you play in state, and then see how much better this feels next week this time.
Yeah, I would agree. And you're not just saying that about A.J. Brown because it's the Eagles and it's Jalen and A.J. This is true in a lot of cases, that you feed your best receiver early and get them involved early in a game. And this would just be another team to do that, but it would behoove them to do that for sure. Because, listen, Pittsburgh is an excellent defense. Excellent defense, getting pressure on the quarterback, stopping the run. So they're going to need all facets of this offense, even though it is more of a running offense, leading the league in rushing. They just listen. They got to figure it out. I mean, they have to figure it out amongst themselves on what direction they're going to go. Because I'd imagine I guarantee you, there are people in that locker room, maybe the O-line, in their stance, looking behind at these two and saying, guys, friggin' work it out, huh? We're up here busting our asses, okay? And you guys are bickering or don't get along, or there's some kind of, separation. Are you serious? I mean, we got a 9-game winning streak going. We're considered the second best team in the NFC. And all of a sudden, you guys supposedly have beef. Work it the hell out. Get out of the sandbox, as a kid, fighting on the playground and work it out.
Yeah. A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts also contractually, they're going to be here. Things are good. So, yes, you need Lane Johnson to lean back Jackie Moon style, yell everybody, love everybody, and keep this thing moving in a positive direction here for Philadelphia, where, again, they can and have shown us an ability to work this out on the field. A.J. Brown's been a 1,400-yard receiver for them each of the last 2 years now. So, that can go in a positive direction, but we know what's coming out of this one. A nice players-only meeting on deck this week in Philadelphia to try and sort this out for everyone. A place that might have more existential issues, Dad, would be the Chicago Bears, though, because this is interesting. Obviously, they got clubbed this weekend by the San Francisco 49ers, outgained by 315 yards, down 3 scores at the half. You had your star quarterback, Caleb Williams, sacked 7 times, 56 on the season, on pace for 73 by year's end at the rate that he's going. But the interesting comments I thought came, Dad, as, listen, they elevated Thomas Brown from interim offensive coordinator after Shane Waldron got fired, and now interim head coach after Matt Eberflus got fired. And surprise, surprise, when you took someone from a role that was already new to them, he seemed to be doing pretty well, and Thomas Brown calling plays, and then elevated him further so he was doing less of that, everyone in the process seemed to get worse, and you ran into a team that was motivated. And so, Dad, I'm not surprised by that at all when you keep jumbling up the roles there on the fly in the middle of the season, that they didn't exactly get that new coach bump. But then yesterday on Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000 in Chicago, they talked about some reports, or at least scuttle around there, that Ryan Poles was frustrated with the change of command around there when Kevin Warren came over as the president of football operations. And I saw our very own Michael Lombardi tweet out today that Kevin Warren is in charge of everything in that building, football decisions and otherwise. So it does make you wonder for Chicago and all of the issues they've had as an organization, how they sort this out going forward with their decision makers. After that press conference, we saw Kevin Warren saying, hey, Ryan Poles is going to be the GM. He's got a bright young future, yada, yada, all that stuff about how they get their house in order ahead of an offseason where they got to pick a head coach now.
Yeah, I don't understand. Thomas Brown's job was to take care of Caleb Williams. And that's what they made him do. That's what Matt Eberflus made him do. And then Matt Eberflus is gone, and they take that responsibility away or divide it up for Thomas Brown. Now, it's not like I'm looking at, at the coaching staff of the Bears. It's not like they have a lot of unbelievably tenured coaches. But Thomas Brown is a young coach there as well. To give him the head coaching job and put that more responsibility on him and take it away from Caleb Williams, to me, was a mistake. I mean, again, in his first head coaching job, they had 4 yards at halftime. 4 yards. That should have been. I like what the Saints did with Darren Rizzi making the offensive or the special team coach the head coach. Now, again, I don't know the dynamics of the coaching staff of the Bears, but I do not think it was the right move to go Thomas Brown and take him away from Caleb Williams, a guy who had been playing pretty well. I mean, you look at another situation. Look at the Jets. When they made Jeff Ulbrich, who was the D coordinator, the head coach. When Robert Saleh was there and Ulbrich was the D coordinator, they were giving up 17 points a game. With Ulbrich as head coach taking away, now he's still running the defense, but he has other responsibilities as a head coach. They're giving up almost 27 points a game. So, I mean, you're taking the responsibility away from them and adding more responsibility to them when it's kind of a head scratcher, or a real head scratcher in Chicago. A young coach like Thomas Brown, for being a coordinator, then all of a sudden, boom, you're the head coach. You're running the entire team. Well, wait a minute. I was supposed to be taking care of Caleb Williams. I'm still going to try and do that. But now I'm kind of auditioning as a head coach.
Well, he had also been the offensive coordinator for only a handful of weeks at that point.
Exactly.
He was the passing game coordinator before that. So right as he's getting used to one job and feeling like, all right, I can do this pretty well. It's only a couple of standard deviation points off what I was doing. Now, all of a sudden, he's handed the keys to the whole operation. And like you said, and we hear this from coaches all the time, hey, becoming a head coach is great, but it's a markedly different job. And I get to spend less time with the players. I get to spend less time on specific parts of the game plan because I have to be everything to everyone at this point. And in that first rattle out of the box, where usually we see a team get a boost, it was anything. Juan Soto and that massive contract shocked the world of sports yesterday and gave us all some fun math to do. So for more on that and the ripple effects felt throughout Major League Baseball, we're delighted to bring in ESPN baseball analyst Eduardo Pérez down at winter meetings right now, covering that all over ESPN. You can check him out as a part of Sunday Night Baseball as well during the season. Eduardo, good morning, man. How you doing?
Good morning, man. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun to be here with you guys. Whew.
Are you reminiscing over the like $500 or $600 million deal you signed when you played?
Yeah. Then I woke up and I realized it was the most beautiful dream I've ever had. No, I think everybody is in shock with the amount of money. You know, we all knew that Steve Cohen had and has this kind of money. We all know that he's an avid art collector, over $1 billion in art. But he went out there and he got himself the first live piece of art, and that's with Juan Soto. Did he overpay? Probably. But you know what? He can afford it. And it's not a ripple effect. This is a tsunami waiting to happen, because right now it's Juan Soto's off the board. We've seen the quiet, the calm before the storm. And I think right now, today and tomorrow are going to be big-time signing days for some big names, because people are trying to place their people. And a lot of players want to get it done before Christmas. So this is usually the time that it happens.
For this signing in particular, how big is this as far as the dynamic between not only the Mets and the rest of the league where they're trying to go out and win a World Series, but even in their own backyard between the Mets and the Yankees, where historically they've been the little brother? How much does a signing like this change that feeling around town for people that wear Mets colors?
You know, it's interesting for the Mets fans. They're like, yeah, we finally got one from the Yankees. We finally beat them in the offseason. We took a player that we could not compete with economically before when it was the Wilpons owning the team, and we're able to beat the Steinbrenner. But they didn't beat George on this one. And the reality is that they still need to do more, and that's the Mets, in order to be competitive in their own division. Because the Phillies are still really good. The Atlanta Braves, they're going to get Acuna back at some time next year. They're going to get Strider back at some time next year. And on paper, they're going to look very competitive as well. But the Mets still need to fill the void at first base. They have to find out what they're going to do. Are they going to move Mark Vientos from third to first and then find themselves a third baseman? They still need pitching. I mean, I had a conversation with Carlos Mendoza yesterday during the winter meetings, and he's like, Soto, yes, it helps. It gives you a balance behind Lindor in the 2 spot, but we still need pitching. And he's right. You know, they lost Severino to the Athletics. Manaea is a name that they need, I think, to get back because they don't lose draft pick compensation from him. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Mets continue to fill that roster. But the one thing we do know, Steve Cohen doesn't care. He's got a lot of money, and he'll go out and he'll get his guys.
Well, it's reminiscent of the Dodgers getting the one big piece in Shohei Ohtani, but they had other great signings as well and were immediately the favorite, where right now, you just mentioned the Phillies and Atlanta, the Mets could still be third in their own division as far as ranking unless the Mets do more. How much do you think the ancillary part of Scott Boras being the agent and the agent to so many players where maybe wink, wink, nod, nod, hey, we're going to get another player coming to the Mets because you got Juan Soto coming to you?
See, this is the problem, and this is one of the things I get nervous coming on your show because you start throwing words that I don't know, so I have to look up ancillary real quick, but it's okay. I'll figure this one out. Hey, I'm bilingual, man. Spanish is my first language. Look, no, I know exactly what it means. Yeah, Scott Boras helped, but he helped, I think, when it came to year one, setting a vision for the 19-year-old Juan Soto, setting a vision, because this is one of the big reasons why the Washington Nationals a few years ago had to trade Juan Soto after they won the World Series in 2019. They had obviously 2020. Everybody knows what happened there. And they're like, we just can't afford him. They were very honest with Scott Boras. Scott Boras was honest with them. He told them, we're going to seek free agency. He knew he had someone special in Juan Soto. That's the reason why he ended up getting traded to San Diego. San Diego knew they couldn't re-sign him as well. He ends up getting traded to the Yankees, helps them get to the World Series, and we got to this. But it was, yes, he set the vision for him, but the talent is all Juan Soto. And I think it really did not matter who was going to represent Juan Soto in this offseason for this negotiation, because he was going to get his. And a lot had to do with Steve Cohen being a part of it, and a lot had to do with the interest of the only team in Canada, Toronto Blue Jays, being in it, the New York Yankees being in it, the Dodgers interested as well, the Mets. Look, and that's the reason Juan Soto got what he got.
Yeah, Eduardo, for people that might be parachuting in on this, or more casual fans, or maybe someone that's dropping in right now, seeing this number who's outside of baseball, wondering just how rare it is for someone of Juan Soto's talent level to come on the market at his age here. Like, how big of a unicorn was this entire situation relative to what we normally see in Major League Baseball?
Yeah, we saw a unicorn last year in Shohei Ohtani, right? The two, because he could pitch, he could hit. He got his $700 million, but a lot of it was deferred. Juan Soto didn't get any of his money deferred. And it all started look in the Dominican Summer League. You want to go to the roots of it? I'll go straight to the root of it, because I met this kid when he was 19 years old, when he first got to the big leagues. And I said, what was the difference? Why are you here now? And he said, because one coach in the Dominican Republic said, I asked him, he goes, I need to get to the big leagues. What do I need to do? And his coach said, you have to swing at strikes. Anything that's out of the zone, do not swing at it. It's okay to walk. It's great to have on-base percentage. It's great to be known to have a great eye. He listened and he followed through. Easier said than done. And he was able to do it because you see a lot of free swingers, a lot of guys that are great hitters, but they don't have the home plate discipline. He reminds a lot of people of Barry Bonds when Barry Bonds was in his mid-30s. Juan Soto accomplished all of this at the age of 19, 20. He becomes a free agent at the age of his last year before becoming a free agent was 25. So he'll play at the age of 26 now. He just turned 26. He's in the prime years of what is considered baseball life for position players. The age of 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32 are prime years. You're going to get him at 26. Most of the free agents are free agents by the time they're 29. He's 3 years ahead of schedule. They're paying him for what he's going to do, not for what he's already done, even though what he's already done is special. That's why Juan Soto is a unicorn when it comes to being a free agent, a guy that can mash in the zone, not known for his defense, not known for his speed, but if you look at all the numbers, he's amongst the greats of all time doing what he does.
So you mentioned getting Juan Soto, great, but they need more help, especially pitching. Blake Snell agreed to a 5-year, $182 million deal with the Dodgers. So how much does Corbin Burnes get from the Mets? Because you know that's going to be someone they're going after. Does he get more than Blake?
Well, this is the thing. I think Corbin Burnes might end up being a Yankee because you talked about earlier being a ripple effect of other position players and pitchers. Now that the teams have been able to open up their annual their annual average value to see what they can afford when they were trying to get Juan Soto, they figured out maybe we can spend on 3 players, 3 elite players or 2 elite players instead of going after one big fish. And the Yankees need pitching. The Yankees need arms behind Garrett Cole. They need guys that can post every 5th day. Corbin Burnes is a dude. Max Fried is a dude. Those guys can they already had a Zoom call. It's already been reported that the Yankees have met with Corbin Burnes. They've met with Fried. So I expect the Yankees to be active when it comes to pitching. I expect the Yankees to become active also at first base. Maybe Christian Walker's a name that's been floated around, and maybe even Alex Bregman at third base for the Yankees. So the Yankees aren't done. And now they can pivot, but so can the Toronto Blue Jays. So can the Dodgers as well with what they might be looking for in certain positions. It's going to be interesting to see, as some call it the ripple, I call it the tsunami.
Yeah, no, the tsunami seems to be coming. And in years we've seen, hey, some of this drags on a little bit longer. This has certainly expedited a lot of the conversation, which is great for these other free agents. Eduardo, is there another monster deal like this lurking out there? Certainly not to this level, but who will be the other big contract or biggest contract signed this offseason, do you think?
Yeah, I think Alex Bregman could get $200 million. I really do. You know, there's it's speculated that it could be between 160 and 180. We saw what a Willy Adames ended up getting from the San Francisco Giants, and Buster Posey making his first big splash as a general manager, ends as a president of baseball operations there in San Francisco. So if Willy Adames got that, Alex Bregman, who's one of the best eyes in the game. I think from the right side, you could say that he's the best eye that you have in baseball. From the left side, definitely it's Juan Soto. So I believe Alex Bregman, who just won a Gold Glove Award this past year, who had a really good second half of the season, I think he could turn into something around $200 million. And it could come from the Yankees. It could come from the Astros. He could stay there because he means a lot to the community as well. But it could also come from the Mets.
So Juan Soto, again, to the Mets with the big stick that he carries. How many golden at-bats will he get? So
yeah,
what do you think of the golden at-bat rule?
Oh, look. I've asked, and I do my morning show as well in Sirius XM on the leadoff spot, and we have a special here as well. And yesterday we had a couple managers, and the first manager I asked was Terry Francona, because Tito Francona is as legit as can be. He's back old school. I wanted to know. And right when I was in the middle of the golden at bat thing, you could see his face. He's like, it just turned. He wanted to put a big piece of chew in his mouth, and where's the bubble gum? Let me. And he goes, no. He goes, look, I'm totally opposed to it. I don't want it. And I said, but who's your guy? And he's like, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to answer that. I said, okay. So I moved on to Stephen Vogt, the manager of the Cleveland Guardians. And he goes, Jose Ramirez. He goes, I don't like the rule, but if I did, I'm in a great spot. Jose Ramirez. Just imagine if the New York Yankees had this rule, who would be the guy? Of course it would be Aaron Judge. He would have over 100 extra at-bats in the year. That would change the entire record books. With 100 extra at-bats, how many home runs do you think Aaron Judge would hit? Let's say he hits 10% of that. So 10 more home runs, extra at-bats for Aaron Judge. Yeah, the kids will love it to see him. It'll keep people in the stands. But the big issue is, what do you do with the record books? Because this is a very traditional league. We've had extra inning rules. We've changed a lot of sliding rules, contact rules, and all that. But this would definitely send not just a ripple or a tsunami. This would send a huge aftershock when it comes to baseball rules and legacies.
No doubt. Anytime you're sourcing ideas that may have originated from Stu Gatz on the Levitard show, you're wading into some interesting waters for the sport overall. But like you said, fun to think about, fun to go through the machinations of, unless you're Tito Francona and then you want nothing to do with it. Eduardo, we really appreciate this, man. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for all the insight and the help. Enjoy the rest of your time down here in Dallas, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. All right.
Appreciate you guys. I had to smack my face a couple times to get the CPAP marks out of my face, so I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate
Thanks,
you getting
Eduardo.
up with us. Thanks, Eduardo. Appreciate it, man. Again, you guys can check out Eduardo Perez doing a great job over at ESPN on a variety of platforms talking about Major League Baseball there and getting up for us here, Dad.
And he's so right. I mean, the Mets have more to do, right? The Dodgers did more than Shohei. Shohei was the headline. Juan Soto's the headline, but they have more to do within their own division. I mean, that's if you rank their division right now, I wouldn't be stunned if they were third behind Philly and Atlanta until they do more. And he's also right. The Yankees can do maybe 2 or 3 multiple players instead of one big one, and may get these pitchers instead of the Mets. We'll see.
When you were starting to say he was right, I thought we were going to be talking about the golden at bat still, baby. Let's focus on the importance. Who joins us every Tuesday to make it feel like a Wednesday so we can help advance the ball on your week some here. Charlotte Wilder, the co-host of Oddball with Amin El Hassan, every day but Friday here on the DraftKings Network. Charlotte, what's going on, bud? How you doing?
Oh, I'm great. I'm so happy to be here, as always. Happy to advance the week. There's a lot of stuff going on, guys. I'm sure you've covered a lot of it already, but I've been very excited to join this here program.
Charlotte, what's caught your eye most here? We know you are a purveyor of all things sports. You are the arbiter of what is sports. You are a sports gossip expert that people can check out on that podcast as well here. What have you been most excited to talk about here? What have we missed?
I mean, there's so much. Timmy Chalamet goes on game day, makes the most amazing picks ever. Tom Brady's ex-wife, who is better known as the supermodel Gisele Bündchen, is photographed with her jiu-jitsu boyfriend instructor, pregnant. Well, she is. He's not. For the first time. Kate Martin in that WNBA expansion draft, her girlfriend posted one of the funniest videos I've ever seen. I mean, I have a whole list. Let's see. The tennis player Taylor Fritz regrets bleaching his hair and actually dyed it back to brown before it could grow out because it looks so. I mean, we're working with a lot of stuff, Mike, and the Eagles are fighting in public and the Bears might explode.
Boy, what a great time for your gossip show, huh?
Thank you. Yes, I'm very excited.
Dad, Charlotte, I'm glad you mentioned the first one on the list here, too, because we did not talk about this. And there's still plenty of big-time college football news to talk about yesterday as we got word that Carson Beck is dealing with an elbow injury after the SEC championship game, and his availability now in question for the college football playoff. Georgia's got the first round bye, being the 2 seed in the tournament, but we all saw the nature of that hit. And so now if he's called into question, Brock Vandagriff, who came in as the backup and helped them actually win the game, would be the guy in line to start there, but certainly changes the balance of power in the sport that we could talk about. But we did not bring up Timothy Chalamet and the job that he did. Lisan Al-Gaib went on College Game Day and absolutely brought it there. One of the more surprising performances, Charlotte, I think I've ever seen. And Dad, from a game day guest picker ever, was Timothy Chalamet and the confidence he immediately strode onto that set with as he went out there and confidently picked Ohio to, in most people's estimation, upset Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship game. On and on down the list, Dad. How impressed were you by Timmy Chalamet?
Well, again, listen, these guys are given some information, some follow, but some are given. He sold it well, right? I mean, he pulled it off like he was up on it. And maybe he was up on it more than I thought. But he did a great job. It was phenomenal.
I think he might have been, because the way, he said, Uncle Andy, this is for you, when he picked SMU. I think also there is something about a performer who is that confident and can assume a role. Like, it was such an amazing thing to watch him just become a College Game Day guest picker. Like, he had the cadence right. Honestly, he should play a broadcaster in his next. Someone needs to cast Timmy Chalamet as a sports broadcaster in his next role, or as like a guy with a podcast, because I think he could absolutely nail it, Mike.
Timothy Chalamet as Ben Solak in the movie about Ben Solak's life seems like the role he was born to play, given the fact that they both look perpetually like they're 21 years old. So that would be pretty incredible. But no, I thought it was a really fun subplot to a week, and we're going in. I'm sure a lot of people were very skeptical of it, and he went out there and delivered in a big way. Charlotte, speaking of drama, no bigger drama in general than the college football playoff ranking shows that we get here. You saw the final round of rankings. You've gone and waded through the waters of college football before going on the road during your time at Fox. I'm curious what you made of all of the hand-wringing surrounding the SEC, Alabama getting left out in favor of a team like SMU, and how that ultimately led to the bracket that we got.
Yeah, I mean, the Alabama SMU stuff is sort of fascinating to me, because I think they made the right decision by putting SMU in, but then I think it's sort of like Alabama propaganda coming out of that university now, because they're like, well, you said you wanted us to play hard teams, and maybe we'll have to reevaluate it. Everything sort of feels like a veiled threat in the aftermath of them being left off, and I think that they were probably, when this expansion happened, Alabama was probably like, fantastic. This will just make it even easier for us to be perennially in the college football playoff. For them not to be in the first year, I would think they're embarrassed. I would think they're embarrassed the first year that this expands. And, they had 3 losses. And to say that, SMU's, it's exactly what we talked about before, Mike. It's exactly what we talked about a few weeks ago. And who was it? Russillo, who was like, it should really just be all SEC, because like that's the strength of schedule. That is hard to say, by the way. Nobody gives college football people enough credit for saying that so much so quickly. I think it comes down to the fact that like this is clearly a bigger disagreement than anybody will ever be able to agree on, if teams in the SEC and some fans just think that the SEC means more. What can I say?
So what and you figure it's going to be tweaked. If they do tweak the system, what would be one of the first things you would change?
The one thing that I do kind of agree on that, Steve Sarkisian at Texas said was that just because you win your conference doesn't necessarily mean you should be a top 1 seed. I think it's how the March Madness NCAA tournament for basketball works. Like, you can win your conference and you can be in, but you might not be seeded top in your bracket the whole way through. And I feel like that is one sort of easy change that they could make that would take into account some of the more variables of college football, that you're just never going to be able to have a clean who's better until they play each other. But I don't know. I'm intrigued to see how this works. You know, if some of these early games are just absolute slugfests or it's a blowout, I think there will be some discussion. But at the same time, you won your conference. I don't know. I don't know, Mike.
Yeah, it becomes interesting because in the first round of the old 14 playoff, there were routinely blowouts that we saw there. And you look at the spread of the first round games right now, they're going to happen on campus, and all of them are a touchdown plus spread so far, at least from the early lines that we saw on these games. And so I don't know if we'll get competitive games or not. There's a lot of matchups that look like they could be very competitive on paper. You've got the home crowd factor in all of these. But Charlotte, most of the change, I'm with you, seems like it is coming from, one, a place of embarrassment, certainly for a team in a program like Alabama, where, hey, Kalen DeBoer coming in year one, you didn't have to go and be Nick Saban, but making the playoff was going to go a long way in making the locals feel a lot better about the transition. And so you've got that program in a place that they're not exactly used to being, especially with an expanded feel like this. And the SEC in general is one of the two power conferences that remain. It's no disrespect to the Big 12 and the ACC, but we understand people have called the Big 10 and the SEC the power too publicly. I'm not betraying some sort of trust here or saying something out of turn. And so because those two conferences feel like, hey, our media deals are bigger, we've got more teams, we've got better teams, quite honestly, at the top end of this. We do know that. We feel like we are entitled to more. And so when they're not getting it right now, what you're seeing, and Jason Fitz, I was on with him yesterday from over at Yahoo Sports, said it kind of feels like fear-mongering, where it's, if we don't get what we believe we deserve, we'll just take our ball and go do something else right now. And that's sort of the specter that's hanging over the sport, is everybody wondering, well, how long is this version of the playoff going to last if the SEC and the Big Ten don't feel like they're getting everything they want out of this? Because we know good and damn well, Dad, they could just go at any point, start to fracture off and do their own thing. Nick Saban kind of insinuated it on the Rankings Reaction Show, the final one on ESPN this Sunday. And I think that's the one thing that worries a lot of people in what the far-reaching effects of this might be.
Well, I mean, Big Ten got their 4 in. Are they going to go with the SEC? Or is the SEC going to say, come on, fellas, and nobody follows them? Because the Big Ten got the amount of teams that everybody thought the SEC was going to get. So, again, we keep talking about them breaking off, but who knows? I mean, I still think that's a ways away. If SEC and Big Ten break away, I could see the power conferences breaking away before just those two conferences breaking away.
Well, the power conferences, I don't think would also include all of the teams from conferences like the ACC and Big 12, certainly. But even the SEC and the Big 10, there's some folks in the bottom half of that roster that, if we're doing the Super League, are not going to make the cut. And so I think there's plenty of people that should be worried about their future if that's the way that this is all going to go eventually. Speaking of forgetting the future for a second, though, Jesse, I want to get to the present here, because around college football, we also did get a big announcement yesterday on the Heisman front that I want to delve into with these guys.
Well, let's just talk about, like, we're going to be seeing, obviously, some of these guys playing. Genty and Gabriel get the byes. We'll see them New Year's. We'll see Travis Hunter plays in the Alamo Bowl. Cam Ward could be eating a live Pop-Tart. I don't know. 2 questions. Do we think that people could penalize Hunter for not being in the Big 12 championship game? And Carson Beck was in that Heisman conversation for a while. Now we're not we're even going to see him play. No timetable for his return. So what do we think?
Well, I want to start off even zooming the picture out a little bit. Dad, Charlotte, do you guys think these are the right 4 players going to New York?
Senior, speak to it.
I there's part of me that would have put Shedeur Sanders over Gabriel. I mean, I know Gabriel's on the number 1 team, the only undefeated team. I think that helped him a lot. But what Shedeur did, I think, really is somewhat amazing. I mean, again, now the line got better around him. He was a third leader, just under 4,000 yards, 35 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel, listen, was only 400 yards behind him, 7 touchdowns behind him. I get it. It wasn't that far behind him. But Dylan Gabriel got to work with a lot more, though Shedeur did have Travis Hunter to work with. That would have been probably maybe my only change, is because I think for sure Genty and Cam Ward and certainly Travis Hunter should be there. But Shedeur, I think, maybe should have got a little more love, Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I to be honest, this season watched enough various different teams to be able to say I would never. This is a serious thing. It's a Heisman. But I think that Travis Hunter. I was sort of surprised to see that, and I think it's fun. I think Carson Beck is probably one of the more interesting storylines of this whole season, to be honest. Because first I was like, "Who is this guy?" And now I know a lot about this guy in ways that I don't necessarily want to know. So I don't know, Gojo. Are you taking issue with some of these picks? Would you have done something different?
No, I think this is a great field of 4 here. I'm a Heisman voter, as I've said before, so lucky enough to do that, which means I can't disclose who I actually voted for on the ballot. But I will say, of this group here, exceptional players all around. I think this is a remarkably easy year in terms of this and I was glad to see Cam Ward get the nod and make the trip to New York because he was a guy that got penalized just because their team ended up losing games because the defense couldn't stop anyone towards the end of the season. But he played some of the most sensational and entertaining. He had a showman's flair in how he went and played the quarterback position. And in a year where this conversation was dominated by a guy like Travis Hunter, who was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year and had the stats to back it up. I don't know where people keep going back to this idea that Travis Hunter's Heisman candidacy is somehow just linked to snap counts. The guy had over 1,000 yards receiving and 14 touchdowns on offense. The guy had, I think, 11 passes defensed and 4 interceptions on defense to go along with just being stellar when you watched him go out there and do the job. So I thought people trying to poke holes in his candidacy was laughable, as him and Ashton Genty have been the poster for this award all year long.
I think, and again, you have a vote, and even though you're my son, I don't know what your vote is. You haven't even told me what your vote is. I think Travis Hunter wins this comfortably. I think Ashton Genty is second. I think Cam Ward is third, and Dylan Gabriel is fourth. That's how I think it's going to go. But I think Travis Hunter actually wins it somewhat comfortably. Yeah, for those, poo-pooing what he has done, it's ridiculous because it's ridiculously great what he has done with the stats he has put up on both sides of the ball. So, I do think he actually runs away with the Heisman.
And to Jesse's point, it is interesting. The association is, again, Charlotte Wilder is the co-host of Oddball with her and Amin El-Hassan every day but Friday here on the DraftKings Network. So plenty of hoops that we want to get to while we've got her around here to make us better and smarter on that regard. Speaking of being better and smarter here, wanted to clean up one thing as we were talking about the future in the college football playoff for a couple of different players that may or may not be available here. As Georgia, we know we got the news the other day that Carson Beck, dealing with the elbow injury and his availability, called into question, as is Georgia's punter as well, who one of the better putters in the country, and Brett Thorson, who also had a season-ending surgery, it looks like, for him. So certainly a big one there. But Gunnar Stockton, the quarterback that I should have been referencing there, Brock Vandegrift plays for Kentucky now, was in that quarterback room before, but very similar fratty sounding names. And so my brain did the dumb thing. Didn't want any of you walking into the rest of the day thinking it was going to be anyone but Gunnar Stockton potentially in the mix for that one there. With that being said, Jesse, why don't we get to the NBA now and save me from myself at this point?
Gunnar Stockton, what a name. Bet he's going to work in finance at Goldman Sachs. All right, let's talk about some of the Western Conference favorites, that are starting slow out of the gates here, Charlotte. So Nikola Jokic favored to win another MVP, but his team sitting at just 12-10, sitting in the 7th seed right now. LeBron and the Lakers, 13-11. Wolves and Suns are the 9th and 10th seeds right now. This is shaping up to be the greatest play-in tournament of all time, Charlotte. What is with all of these slow starts?
I think that teams would love to know, Jesse, because a lot of this has gone sideways pretty quickly. I mean, Jokic is, if he doesn't play, the Nuggets are horrific. If he does play, apparently they can still be horrific because they lost to the Wizards. The Wizards, who have won 2 games this year, who had lost 16 games in a row, the Nuggets managed to lose to them on Saturday night, even though Jokic had 56 points. If you have the greatest basketball player of all time and you manage to lose to the Wizards, someone's got to look hard in the mirror. I mean, Jokic afterwards was like, I think, in my country, I won't do the accent. He was like, in my country, if you play like that, you get your pay docked. And, the next day, I think he was asked, like, what did you mean by that? And he was like, I did not think it was such a big thing, but maybe it would work because I think they're at a point where, the Nuggets are a second apron team too. They are so far over the amount you're allowed to spend that they can't really do anything. Like they can't trade one player, 2 players for 1 player, I think it is. Things are not looking great. And it kind of bums me out because I watching Jokic play is something that we've really never seen before. And if he can do this basically playing 1v5, then imagine what it could be like because, oh, wait, we can't imagine they won a championship.
Right, exactly. And I think that's the troubling part is we thought when they finally got over the hump, and much like we're talking about with the Boston Celtics this year, where, hey, if you keep that core of talent the same there, and now you've got this championship experience, you've got the time under task on that stage, and maybe now less pressure on you to go out there and feel like you've got to have your hands at 10-2 on the wheel. Does it free something and open something up? And instead, what we saw last year was the rest of the Western Conference rise to meet the Denver Nuggets, but also them slip from the standard a little bit. And this year, it's felt like more of the same. I got a chance to see that team in person here when they came and played the Clippers at the Intuit Dome. The Clippers, by the way, who are in 6th right now in the Western Conference and actually holding on a lot better than I thought they would in a world post Paul George where James Harden is the band leader there now. And Charlotte, I was amazed, like you said, at the non-Jokic minutes and just how abysmal they tended to look for this team and how out of sorts they were. And so it's gone the total opposite where I think we've already seen the best that this team and this core of the roster is going to have to offer now. And because the rest of the Western Conference has become so potent, because you've got even a team like Golden State back in the mix this season in a way that your buddy Amin Al-Hassan predicted before the start of the year, it just makes me feel less and less likely that we are going to string together anything in the way of multiple titles for, as you mentioned, one of the most accomplished bigs of this generation, or really any generation.
I know, and what a drag, right? Like the front office traded away a lot of the veterans who helped them get there. Anytime I see Bruce Brown on the bench for the Raptors because he's hurt. By the way, Bruce Brown has started wearing like exclusively cowboy outfits. Last night he had on a suede jacket with fringe coming off of the sleeves. And I really, I love it. I think that he looks phenomenal. I would love to know why. Maybe I'll try to get to the bottom of it. Makes me smile every time. But every time I see him for Toronto, I'm like, well, hello, Denver. I mean, he's hurt right now, so that's a terrible example. But you know what I mean. They made some moves that did not help them out. And I think that the West right now is just very exciting because you have the Thunder in 1, who I think a lot of us expected to see there. The Grizzlies are in 2nd. And this is something, not to brag, but I said in the beginning of the season, people forget John Morant is unbelievable at basketball when he can keep himself on the court. And he's even doing things like saying he's not going to dunk anymore because he doesn't want to risk injury, or, he's a slight young man and he got hurt getting bumped out of the air at one point. How do you feel about that, Mike? I'm curious to hear you and Senior, what you guys think about that.
By the way, after he said that, he double clutch dunk against the Celtics. I mean, in traffic. So, I mean, I don't know.
His body yearns for the dunk here. The children yearn for the mines, and John Morant's body yearns for the dunk.
Yeah. He can't help himself. I mean, he's just too great of an athlete to stay on the ground where he said 2 points is 2 points. I get it, and I get putting himself at risk of getting knocked to the ground. But, when you're that great of an athlete, you have to take flight. So I'm with you. I'm not surprised they're number 2. Is Minnesota having trader's remorse as Karl Anthony Towns is averaging 25 and 13 with the Knicks?
Guys, okay, so they did this for money reasons, right? Like they had to get rid of Cat to make this team, the roster work, the money work. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't always understand those things. But they let Cat go and they got Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. And at the time, it was just like, what are they doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, because I live with a Knicks fan, and that Knicks team with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo they got close, but it was just very obvious that those two pieces, well, also Randall was hurt, so he wasn't even a part of that run last year. And so I think it was puzzling. Like, do they think that this is actually something that can work? Was this a desperation move? Like, did they have to get rid of Cat so badly? And I would love to understand if there were other options, or did they wait too long to trade Cat? Like, I just, it feels horribly mismanaged to me, because I think what Cat brings to that Knicks team is so obvious at this point, even though maybe they're not performing quite as well as they should be. I think they're getting a groove together. I think it's taken them a second to learn how to play with each other, but the Wolves, this was not it.
Well, and your point with Carl, though, he looks comfortable in this environment in a way that I'll put the hand up and say I did not anticipate. I wasn't sure Carl was a guy that was built for the Crucible of New York. Now, we'll wait and see when the basketball matters and we get closer to the postseason and all of a sudden the expectations rise if that's the same thing. But he's a guy that does, I think, benefit from having teammates that clearly have a belief in him. And Anthony Edwards, we talked about last year, did a phenomenal job of that, of being a guy as a leader that constantly praised Carl, that talked about how important he was to that team. And it seems, Charlotte, that Jalen Brunson, who is the unquestioned leader of this Knicks group, does seem to embolden Carl in similar ways and is getting that kind of production. I mean, Carl's averaging 25, 13, and 3 right now through the early portion of the season, and looks like he is the second best player on this team outside of Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, and Brunson is also averaging 25 points a game. Like, this is the thing that's working, and I think that's a great point, Mike, because when we talked about this trade happening, we said, okay, well, Carl's going to be able to space the floor for Brunson. He's going to be able to provide that 3-point shooting from a big that, well, 3-point shooting in general, besides Brunson, that they really needed. And I think you're right. It's been really fun to see what Cat has been able to do for Brunson. And it's exciting to me that they keep looking, they faltered in certain places, but like watching the game last night against the Raptors, there was a moment at the end where it was closer than it should have been. And then Cat hit a 3. And the joy on the faces of his teammates was like, it was a kind of a pure thing that I don't often see in sports in a regular season game for the NBA. It was just like relief, but also you could see the confidence rising every time something like that happens. Also, I would like to make the parallel between Karl Anthony Towns and Jason Tatum being two exceptional players, unbelievable, who are also unbelievably corny. And every time they talk, you're just like, he said, I guess it was Clyde Frazier who was interviewing him afterwards. And he was like, Carl, how'd you do it? He was holding up the New York on his jersey, and Carl just goes, "We dem boys," and said it in a way that he just didn't sell it. And you're like, oh my God. And my husband was sitting there being like, oh, and I was like, welcome to having a superstar who says things like, we did it after they won a championship, and you don't care because they won a championship. So we'll see if that's in the cards for the Knicks.
So going back to the West and looking at the Lakers, did we get a little bit of fool's gold early in the season when the Lakers started out so well? They're 13-11, 24 games. Now, AD and LeBron have both only missed one game. You know that's going to be more, though, as the season goes on. Are they? Do you think they eventually end up in the play-in round and they just didn't improve that roster enough?
I mean, I think at some point, if they're lucky, they get into the play-in. If they keep slipping, I mean, this roster, I do not believe that it was built for success. And I kind of feel it's astonishing to me, the decisions that they've made. And when JJ Redick took this job, I think it was his press conferences after some of these games. He seemed embarrassed. He seemed frustrated. There's simmering anger. And part of me wonders if he didn't have to do some mental gymnastics to be like, I can make this work. I think also for him, he needs to prove that he's a good coach, which I think he's already proven. So I would argue none of that really matters. I think JJ's fine out there. I was just going to
ask Charlotte, have you seen from the early returns in here that JJ Redick is capable of doing this job in a way that just extends past whatever goes on with this year's Lakers team?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think he's been amazing. I think given what he's working with, the start that they got off to was incredible. They just do not have the depth. I think Austin Reeves is Peyton Pritchard better than Austin Reeves? My column. I think that there is a level of it confuses me, guys, because if LeBron James if you have LeBron James, you have late stage LeBron James who is still playing unbelievably well, except when he's not, because he probably shouldn't be playing every game. He should be the cherry on top. He should be like that piece that is so exciting and fun, and you can't believe you still have him, and you put him in, and he can run up the score, or he can have amazing assists. But the fact that he is pretty much what they rely on when he's, 10, 20 days away from turning 40 is like somebody had to do something here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's what this ultimately comes down to. For all of the headlines that we're probably going to see, read, and hear about the Lakers between now and January, especially when the trade deadline comes up, where they're going to have to do something because LeBron's here and you can't just sit idly by in January if this team is continuing to underachieve relative to his standard, even if it's not realistic for this roster. This roster is ultimately one that Dad's, I think, point was spot on, was imperfect enough coming into this season to where now if you're starting to see LeBron with the valleys dipping lower when he does succumb a little bit to age as the process wears along, especially if you're trying to put him out there each and every night and have him still be the one guy, which could be the debate going forward for this team. LeBron James out the other night, Anthony Davis goes off and has a big time night. And we saw that early in the season. When the offense goes through AD and the team works through AD, things looked a little bit better than the other way around here. You just wonder how able to absorb that this current Laker.
Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., and Charlotte Wilder here with you on a Tuesday. So more college football news in the coaching carousel world. The Belichick reports are not going away, okay, that he might be coaching at UNC. It's been craziness over the past few days. The reports have made it all the way up to New England. Here's Jonathan Jones when asked about the possibility of Bill coaching the co-eds.
That was along those lines. How do you think a conversation with Bill would go if a kid comes in asking for more NIL money?
Oh, man. I wouldn't want to know. I wouldn't want to know. Like I said, he's the type, like I said, he'll pull up your transcript, like what classes you're failing. Like, you want more money. You can't, what about your history grade or something like that. But, no, it's like I said, different landscape. And, if he chooses to do that, I think it'd be something he could do.
It's hard to imagine Bill navigating the world of NIL and the transfer portal and everything. But a few years ago, we probably would have said, it would be hard to imagine Bill dating a 23-year-old. So it seems like anything is possible.
Yeah, here we are.
It certainly does. Charlotte, you're someone who obviously rooted for a team that Bill Belichick coached for a long time and both shocked by the fact that we have got him doing bunny ears on his 24-year-old girlfriend now. So truly the world does seem to be his. I mean, my God. By the way, can we just take a moment? We bumped a break with this picture before here. Charlotte, can you explain who was telling us about the background of this picture here? Bill Belichick busting out the move that was 100% in play when he was a kid and trying to make it new again because now he's got to impress his young girlfriend is incredible.
Guys, this is at the Nantucket Christmas Stroll. It's an event that takes place every December. People head out there. They stroll around. I think there are a bunch of Christmas lights. She posted, this is from a carousel. This is from an Instagram carousel that Jordan Hudson. What's her last name? I don't know. That Jordan his
Hudson.
24-year-old.
You're right.
Is it?
Yeah, Jordan Hudson.
I was like, oh, Jennifer Hudson is the singer. I was like, that can't be right. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Jordan Hudson, his 24-year-old girlfriend, posted this as a part of a carousel on her Instagram. I believe they live together now. This is not relevant to what you're asking me. Here's the thing. Bill Belichick left coaching the NFL largely in part, the reports were because he was having trouble connecting with this generation of players. Look, maybe his young girlfriend has taught him, here's how you need to talk to these people. But if Nick Saban retired because he didn't want to deal with the landscape of NIL, you think Bill Belichick is going to have a good time when someone comes to him and is like, I'm leaving because this other school is there are better opportunities in the transfer port? Like, I just have such... And in the quotes where it talks about potentially taking this job, he's like, well, college is a lot more like the NFL now. And it's like, that cannot be the reason that Bill thinks this is possible.
So I don't want to digress for a moment, but I'm going to. What's a carousel?
Oh, yeah.
It's just multiple pictures in one photo, almost like, is that like a photo dump basically?
Yeah, so Senior, you
like a
used
collage?
to be able, yes. So when you went on Instagram, you used to just be able to post one photo at a time, but now you can make a collage of photos.
No, it's not a collage.
Okay, all right.
It's just multiple photos you can swipe through.
What's the
Okay. I just wanted some clarification on that.
Like a art project.
As far as Belichick, I think the only way, now he'd have to make a decision on this soon because, by the way, the transfer portal opened up Monday. So all these teams without a coach, they got players in flux. Are they going to jump in the portal? Are they not? If he were to take this job, it would mean to me, Mike, that he did not think he was going to get an NFL job because there is no doubt in my mind he wants to coach in the NFL because, as I'll continue to say, he's 15 wins away from being the all-time winningest NFL coach and passing Don Shula. So if he takes the college job, to me it's because he doesn't think he'll get an NFL job, of which there are 3 open now and probably 3 to 4 more that will open up. So potentially, say 5 to 7 jobs being open in the NFL. If he took North Carolina, that means he doesn't think he would get an NFL job.
Yeah, and certainly might also look at some of those NFL jobs and go, maybe I don't want those. Maybe those aren't environments that are going to get me any closer to those wins that I need based on where some of these organizations are at right now, the ones that we know the jobs are already open. So I certainly think that could be part of it as well, Dad. And you're right on that. I think the NFL would understandably be his first choice. I do wonder, we've talked about, jokingly, the influence of his girlfriend. I wonder what it's been like because we know Bill Belichick's dad was a coach in college, but now his son is a defensive coordinator at Washington. And we know Bill's been out there a bunch and been around the program. Jed Fish is a guy that's got familiarity with Bill Belichick. And I do wonder how being around that environment, Dad, may have also at least opened him up more to this being an option. We thought he'd just sit and do media if he wasn't going to coach in the NFL again this year. To actually go back and commit to doing this, maybe that exposure did open his eyes to, all right, this landscape is a little bit more familiar with what I've been dealing with than it used to be in college.
And by the way, you look at any coach's Wikipedia page, right, and see the travels that they've made. And Bill's in his 72 years old, so he's traveled a bunch, Charlotte. He has never coached in college. His first job was a special assistant with the Baltimore Colts. He's been an NFLer his entire career, as you look at the well-traveled Wikipedia page. And most coaches start out in college, usually at a GA at the school they're alumni of and played at or went to. He has never coached in college. I just don't see this happening, Charlotte.
His dad actually coached at UNC. I think Bill lived at UNC for 3 years. I unfortunately do see it happening. I just don't see it going well. And I think that is something that Bill would need to consider when making this decision, because I guess if you're Bill Belichick, you have unbelievable amounts of confidence because of what you've accomplished in your career, as you should. I just think that the landscape is so different now. And if a NFL team didn't hire him, I mean, look, I could be proved wrong. But I mean, I guess who wants to coach the Jets anyway, right, Mike?
Yeah, more or less, that's kind of what it comes down to. Although I will say, Charlotte, to your point about Bill and will this work or not, because he went on Pat McAfee's show the other day and basically said, yeah, these meetings have happened. I've been talking to this team, and laid out what his vision for this would be like. And it sounded a lot like what Herm Edwards talked about when he tried to bring that NFL approach to Arizona State. We know that came with a little bit of a sanction on the back end. But for Bill Belichick, it was talking about this idea of developing guys for the NFL level, trying to run it like an NFL team, being able to do that because the business model is a little bit more like that. And on the North Carolina side of things, they've had a few other conversations with coaches that have all of a sudden not borne fruit. John Sumrall, the coach at Tulane that a lot of people thought might be the guy, came out and very publicly said, no, I'm not good here. An opportunity has not been presented to me that would pry me out of here, and pulled his name out of the running for that. And I think either signed or is about to sign an extension with Tulane. And so on their side, they've already started asking their NIL people, but that's going to be the difference, Dad, is can he go in here and mold his game to modern players? Because the way we've talked about, the way Bill Belichick always coached is not something that we necessarily associate with being the model for coaching Gen Z and beyond when it comes to the players currently in the game.
Now, the model in college is, as I said, he never coached in college, so he never really had the college way of coaching. The coaching now in college is more like the NFL, where teams are hiring GMs to kind of look over the roster. So it is closer to the NFL. As a reason, Charlotte, to your point of why you think he may take the job, it is closest to the NFL as far as how you have to deal with players now.
I'll say the business model is more that way. I mean more Bill Belichick style of relentless accountability of, hey, man, I went at Tom freaking Brady and held him accountable so long that even that guy didn't like it anymore. Are college kids with options who are not used to, I'm sure, being coached to that level. It's an old school approach that we see a little bit less often now. And it's not to disparage the generation under or anything. It's just to say, hey, it's a different world. At least it seems from my experiences going in, seeing the way some of these teams are coached right now. I do wonder if that style works as well in 2024 as it did prior to that. Players still want to be coached hard. Great players are always going to have that approach. And rate and review our show. Leave it a 5-star rating and check us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKings Network. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, GoJo and Golic on YouTube. Hit the bell so you know when we're going live in the morning, and check out all of our videos, full interviews that we do with all of our guests heading up on that channel there so you can check it out after the show. If you miss us live or any of our great guests, thank you to ESPN MLB analyst Eduardo Pérez, who joined us from winter meetings down in Dallas, and our buddy Charlotte Wilder, who's sticking around here to finish off the show with us. Check her out on Oddball with Amin El Hassan, as well as the Sports Gossip podcast. If you miss any of that, check it out wherever you get our pod or right here on YouTube as soon as we're done. Guys, let's start off with this. Dan Campbell, coaching the best team in the NFL right now, the Detroit Lions, vibes king, immaculate, emotional big guy, which has taken everybody by so much more so that everybody wants to be him, including one actual Dan Campbell lookalike contest that apparently went down here. They brought a bunch of guys in that tried to pull this off. We had a winner, Dad, who, listen, being comped to Dan Campbell in a lot of ways is a massive compliment. We mentioned he's got great emotional intelligence for a guy that's got the meathead label, but as much as anything, it shows you're in pretty damn good shape because he is the cage match champion for coaches until further notice around the NFL. The guy who won in pretty good shape, but like with most former professional athletes, the shoulders are the difference. Dan Campbell's got shoulders like boulders that I think, and I've always said this for pro athletes, even when they're done, if you cut into them, it's like the rings on a tree. You can see the years of wear and tear and muscle that they've put on there. And he's a little bit lacking in that department. Yeah, but it's a good lookalike. What is his name? Colton Pouncey? Is that who won it? No, that's the account that tweeted it out. He's the Detroit Lions writer for The Athletic who was at the Dan Campbell lookalike contest. We don't actually have the name of the winner here because you don't have a name when you're in that. It's like Fight Club. We're all Robert Paulson. It's pretty cool. It's pretty good look though. But you're right as far as the shoulders, and that's always tough to match. But it's a good look. Holding the football with the play sheet, clipped to his belt and the headset around his neck. I think it's a good look.
I think this is just the way that Dan Campbell is like emotionally intelligent and modeling great behavior for meathead looking men. I think that the lookalike contest itself is great because it's like men get to play dress up. And I don't know whether this started with the Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest in Washington Square Park, or if this is just a lookalike party trend contest that we're seeing. But I think it's the more men dressing up as other men, I think it's the better.
They get to play dress up has me weak. That's amazing. Yes.
I want to take it even a step further, a Dan Campbell pageant where it's not just you dress up like him, but you have to also give a pregame speech. You've got to try and motivate your guys. You've got to cry at the podium while you're trying to implore these men to put their trust and faith in you. I want all aspects of Dan Campbell covered in this, including having tiny little dogs. So I think this has to be a full, all-encompassing Dan Campbell pageant, Dad. I mean, he's got it all, right? He's a big, tough guy who talked about biting kneecaps in his opening presser. He's got little dogs. He loves caffeine, and he's emotional, right? I mean, to see a big guy cry
and be emotional. He runs the gambit of everything. I mean, there's something about him for everybody to love.
I just realized, guys, Dan Campbell is the emotionally healthy version of Joe Mazzulla.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right.
I mean,
we can expand on that later.
no.
I'll workshop it. Yeah.
We're gonna workshop that bit a little bit. Speaking of something that's definitely not a bit, but the wave of what's next here, Jesse. Let's get to that. A big announcement, yet another accolade for an all-time great already college women's basketball player and budding WNBA superstar.
Yeah, it should come as a surprise to absolutely no one that Time has named Caitlin Clark their Athlete of the Year. And this, oh my God, look at that photo. She looks incredible. I mean, I think everybody's going to be buying this and cutting out the photo and putting it like a poster on their walls the way you used to put like Tiger Beat and put like the pop star boys on the walls. It's just Caitlin Clark now.
Yeah, guys, this is incredible. And you're right, Jesse. The photo is iconic and will probably be something. She's already been the inspiration for so many young women, young boys. I've heard plenty of people talk about their kids looking up to what Caitlin Clark has done because of the flair that she has brought to the game and the attention that she's managed. And Charlotte, we know her rookie season came with highs and lows in terms of the level of attention and the scrutiny and the things that surrounded the conversation with her. But this is an understandable and completely deserved honor for one of the most important players in sports right now.
Yeah, it's very cool. I also would like to say that those photographs, anytime I see photographs of athletes in like a big high profile situation like this, I'm like, okay, who took those? Because I know that they got somebody big and special. And those are taken by Cass Bird, who is a very famous photographer who's done like a lot of huge fashion campaigns and just a lot of great work in LA. And so I think it's really cool that they brought in someone sort of from a different world. I always love when sports, you know, and the fashion world or whatever it is overlap in these very niche ways that like occupy a lot of brain space to the point where I know who Cass Bird is. But anyway.
Listen, she has done so much for sports, women's basketball, name it. She has helped an incredible amount. I mean, it's just been stunning, the growth through her participation really in college and in the WNBA. And by the way, she has the second highest all-time WNBA card out, women's sports card, $234,000 one went for sale for. So it's the second highest sale for any women's sports card.
Everything Caitlin Clark touches turns to money right now, and that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. So congratulations for her, Times Athlete of the Year, and only just getting started right now. Actually gets an offseason and a chance to breathe and recuperate here and go from there. Jesse, let's get to the third and celebrate something a little more on the home front.
A wonderful announcement for the GoJo and Golic family. Our newest listener has entered the group chat. Jordan Golic. She was born. She is adorable. Let's get the stats here. 8 pounds, 2 ounces. She's 20.5 inches. Her prediction for the game coming up, Notre Dame 27, Indiana 17. Wow, we think she might be a seer. Congrats to Jake and Jenny. Congrats to Uncle and Grandpa. She's gorgeous. We just are thrilled.
Just awesome. She gave birth yesterday to Jordan Elizabeth Golic. Jake and Jenny. Jenny, just a great job, obviously, out of you. Jake, you were there for a few seconds, so that's, you know, what your contribution was more minimal. Jenny, great job. Jordan, I mean, for me and Chris, our third grandchild, you know, they have Jordan has an older brother in Jackson, who will be looking after her, and obviously Sydney and Ben have Alex, so our third grandchild. We couldn't be happier for Jake and Jenny, and of course, can't wait to hold little Jordan in our arms.
Yes, tiny little peanut here, an absolutely hossed up young lady too, 8 pounds, solid, sturdy. Yeah. She's ready to go here. She's got a bright future in whatever she chooses, but might be able to throw some bows around here as a young athlete. Great job by Jenny, obviously, super pumped for them. I will say, though, on the parenting front, and Dad, Jesse, this is more aimed at you guys here. Jordan and Jackson, I understand the J-name theme for the family here. Going to present some challenges when you're going to eventually scold one of these kids, though, right?
Oh, yeah, you could be mixing those up all day. Get over here, and you yell at the wrong kid, and then you're just sputtering, and then it makes you angrier. 100p.
Oh,
Yeah, and then you put
you'll
the
even
dog
throw
into
one
the
of
mix.
the spouse's name. If Jake is trying to reprimand one of his kids, he'll say Jenny as well. Jenny, no, Jordan, Jackson. And yeah, you'll get it all messed up. There's no doubt about it.
Comedy bears. But actually, to your point, Charlotte, the dog's name is Chip. So he's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, at least Chip's the outlier, although Chip has a brother Jet, so you get another J name thrown into this one.
Right.
Either way, congratulations. Welcome to the world, Jordan. We're excited to meet you. Notre Dame, by the way, covering the spread in Jordan's prediction if anyone wants to tail my new niece and go try and make some money off a baby, because we're not above that around here. She'll be forced to watch the show soon. We didn't force any of you to watch the show. Download, subscribe, rate, and review it. Leave it a 5-star rating and check us out live Monday through Friday. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.